Ready?
Yes, I think so. This
Good,
is
come on over.
This is the name of the show. This is now Bridge to a Better World. And hopefully Bridge to a Better Chair next week. I'm over here.
Whoa, there, and the wheels come right off.
That's right.
If anyone has a good desk chair, this might be the time to let us know about it. Oh, nice shot there, Teresa.
Heard that crack?
Oh, God. So here we are. Good morning, y'all. It's really nice to see you. And we're very glad that we can share this moment together.
This is now Bridge to a Better World. I'm Teresa Mitchell, and that's Ani Haynes.
Bridge to a better chair.
Yes.
More like.
Let's see if I
So.
can find my notes now. Oh, here we are. Taking the right week.
Woo.
Shall we start with headlines then?
Please, let's do.
We'll start with yours.
No. Go ahead.
Mine's lengthy because it's about war.
And we're all lengthy.
Okay. So the big deal is North Korea has offered troops to Russia. Maybe you heard that last week. And like me, maybe you thought, well, they're just saying that. But really, North Korea has offered troops to Russia. And it looks to me like it's moving forward to fight in Ukraine. The most recent news on this from AP masks the to-be-trained North Koreans as construction workers. Not that AP is masking them, but that's the way North Korea and Russia are presenting it. And, shadows. Okay, yes.
Casting shadow on you.
And
sorry, tech advisor.
This is my teleprompter here. It's one of those high-tech, thin teleprompters that makes rattling noises. Anyway, the to-be-trained North Koreans are being presented as construction workers. And one aspect that is also understood from the sanctions context is that Russia will need to pay for these troops up front. Battalions of North Korean mercenaries could make the difference for Putin, who will need to pay in gold and petroleum. So a spike in gold prices in the sight of Russian oil tankers near Pyongyang could indicate that the Ukraine war escalation has gone forward, and I think it's likely to go forward. This is one of those things that is logistically quite ponderous and will take a minute, but it would please both sides greatly. North Korea needs cash greatly. I mean, just in a terrible way. They're set up to process gold payments. They need oil. And Putin needs cannon fodder that doesn't speak Russian. This is perfect for both sides, which is really horrible. But I think that's going forward. In related news, a Taiwanese businessman is creating a home guard force. He is putting forward millions of dollars in cash, which would actually, he wants to have, I think, tens of thousands. It only works out to like $10 per militia person. There's a grand gesture from him and a pitifully insignificant gesture standing by itself. And it brings forth the whole question of the USA's intent regarding the upcoming invasion. As far as I can see, the USA is not negotiating in any way regarding a peaceful outcome. Neither is it providing sufficient air and sea defenses to prevent bombardment and invasion and capture the Taiwanese population. Maybe they're just counting on the fact that it would cost everybody a whole lot of money, but the Chinese have been pretty clear, and especially the Chinese premier has been very clear. That's funny. Did you see the smoke coming out of my ear when I said that? Has it been very clear that they intend to invade? Taiwan apparently shot down a Chinese drone today as it passed over a small archipelago in Taiwanese territory. And in the latest from Ukraine, Clara Weiss writes in WSWS.org, the Ukrainian army's counteroffensive to retake Kherson, a strategic city in southern Ukraine, sorry about the mispronunciation, though announced with grand fanfare on Monday, already seems to be faltering. And speaking for myself, that doesn't mean that it won't, go forward. But it's not, it didn't just run over Kherson. In an unusually blunt commentary for the Washington Post, David Ignatius all but acknowledged that the imperialist backers of Ukraine do not even count on its success. The Biden administration has spent over $50 billion since February alone on arming Ukraine, including a package that will provide for weapons deliveries for at least another 3 years. Ignatius wrote, as Ukraine mounts a new counteroffensive in the southern part of the country, Zelensky's bravado risks setting expectations too high. In truth, Ukraine probably won't liberate its territory this year or even next. Still, as Ukrainian forces push toward the Black Sea coast, Zelensky is delivering a defiant response to President Vladimir Putin's claim that Ukraine is not a real country. Not only can Ukraine survive, Ignatius writes, it can also regain some of its occupied land. So the key phrase here is some of its occupied land, which is not the way the Washington Post was talking before. And Ignatius is a big dog at the Washington Post. So they write, WSWS writes, that Ignatius writes, went on to praise Ukraine's ability
I
to
might have
use
lost track of
the
that.
U.S. I know people say to use U.S. delivered high mobility artillery rocket systems, or HIMARS, and other precision weapons to hit Russian military headquarters, ammunition depots, and other military infrastructure. Above all, however, he stressed the Ukrainian insurgency as a key component of this war, proudly acknowledging that it had been prepared for by Washington over a period of almost 8 years. And there's a lot more to the article. So I'm not going to read all those details, but that's on wsws.org. And basically, it lays out the facts, which is part of how the war goes forward. It's part of how it's providing profits to everywhere from Pyongyang to Washington. This is a war that both sides want, which is a really ugly thing to say. But it's clear that that's the way it's going forward. And there's more information, although it's a little attenuated. But Ignatius kind of goes on to admit that, yeah, the U.S. was training Ukrainian, he calls it special operations forces, for all those years. And yes, they did create many casualties. And, what I have been screaming on my show when I was on the radio years ago is that they're training Nazis. And they succeeded in provoking Putin, who stupidly invaded, and Bob's your uncle. So that's my news item.
All right. It's a lot of news.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for joining us, and please do make sure you are subscribed to the channel. This is now Bridge to a Better World. Please do also hit the notification button and like this video, so it might actually, get served up in the YouTube algorithm of life.
That helps a lot, especially at this phase.
It totally helps.
We're just in a tiny, tiny phase, and we're recovering from being kicked off of Facebook.
Well, that's old history now.
Yeah.
It's a year and a half ago. But we are still rebuilding. And so please do share this around. I couldn't help but notice we gained subscribers over the last month, and I'm super stoked about that. So
Me too.
thank you. And let's keep that ball rolling. All right. So I'm just going to talk about some labor for a moment.
Please.
So the National Labor Relations Board completely rejected the rejected Amazon's attempt, the corporation Amazon, to dispute and overturn the historic union victory in New York that happened earlier this year. Yesterday's NLRB decision paves the way for the JFK 8 warehouse in Staten Island to become the company's first ever certified union shop in the U.S. In a new filing, the NLRB presided over weeks of virtual hearings on Amazon's election objections and concluded that the corporation's protests against the union's landmark victory should be overruled in its entirety. The federal labor official dismissed Amazon's claims that the union committed, check this out, electioneering in the polling area, and my favorite claim, distributed marijuana to employees in exchange for their support.
Where are my pearls? I need to clutch them.
Along with a slew of other allegations levied against the newly formed union. Christian Smalls, who is the president of the Amazon Labor Union, said in a response to the decision that today is a great day for labor. After dealing with all of that in a virtual court, it feels good to finally have celebratory news. That's what Christopher Smalls said in a statement to the press. He says that we're hoping that the NLRB certifies it so we can get some rights in the building and protect our workers. Go, Christopher. I'm sorry, not Christian Smalls. I have his name right in front of me, and I still insist that it can't be Christian. I digress. Amazon has used aggressive union-busting tactics in its failed attempt to fend off the JFK 8 organizing drive and says that it strongly disagrees with the NLRB's decision, go figure, plans to appeal, claiming that the NLRB and the ALU improperly influenced the outcome of the election. Oh, giant corporation being treated so unfairly. Amazon has 2 weeks to file its objection, and if the company's last ditch effort fails, it will be required by federal law to begin contract negotiations with the union. And that, in and of itself, could take months or years. ALU attorney Seth Goldstein said that Amazon was engaging in an outrageous union busting campaign, and he demands that the company come to the table to bargain in good faith. As a veteran labor reporter, Stephen Greenhouse wrote for The Guardian this last week, agreeing on the first contract quickly is really a high stakes matter. He said, if unionized workers at Starbucks, Amazon, or Trader Joe's facilities quickly reach first contracts, and those contracts contain impressive raises and benefits, it no doubt inspires workers in many other Starbucks, Amazon, and Trader Joe's operations to seek to unionize, right? It's the reward for your hard work. But if companies manage to drag out reaching the first contract for a year or two or three, that sends a strong signal that unionization might not be a boon, might be worthless. Just gets dragged out and it's all kinds of bureaucracy. And that, I'm going to go ahead and say, departing from the text, is the Amazon strategy, right? To try to diminish the gains of the
Oh
union.
yeah, people really don't know what they can get. I know I said it before, but I had a great conversation with a person, probably a jobber, driving an Amazon truck, delivering a package, and I said, "Yeah, see this car, this house? I'm living on a union pension. This is what a union can mean."
And so, Greenhouse pointed out that there's no real disincentive to prevent companies from dragging out negotiations indefinitely because it's good for business. Because the federal labor law contains no financial penalties against companies that bargain in bad faith to delay ever reaching an agreement. I mean, that's something that we really need to change.
Oh yes, and this is where you can make personally a difference by going on social media and just talking about what you think about Amazon and the union, because they
Absolutely.
really don't want people thinking about it.
Well, and to actually go in the social medias and talk up unionizing in general. It's true that organizing efforts in the workforce are really increasing. And that is so heartening. It is so heartening. And now to really get that increasing more and more, to have this, I like to just think of this sort of like snowball effect, right? The mighty workers, each one leading the next coworker, each unionized shop being an example to others. It can be so inspiring, but it needs to actually result in benefits to the workers. And as the labor reporter points out, as Greenhouse points out, there is no financial penalty for the companies to operate in bad faith to try to kick those benefits down the road until the labor force, until the workers lose faith. So
And when Amazon increased the prices across the board for their hundreds of thousands of products, it was a conscious decision to punish the entire population for unionization and demands of better working conditions. They are very conscious. I say they, I mean billionaires, very conscious that they want to punish us, and not just punish, but to devolve the strength of the population generally. The weaker we are, the more desperate they are, the more money they can suck up into their golden palaces, so platinum palaces. I don't know what kind of palaces, orbiting palaces.
So your next story?
Also about unions. Rail strike is looming or happening in the UK, Australia, and now the US. This can make a difference also in prices. Rail workers, although it's not what's causing inflation, but rail workers are pissed off about increasingly draconian demands, including trains that are run by one person alone, the whole train. These giant, longer, multi-locomotive things that you see, these monsters crawling across the mountain gaps. Quoting labor notes, railroad unions continue their slow creep along the path to a settlement or strike in contract negotiations covering 115,000 American workers. On August 16th, the Presidential Emergency Board, convened by President Biden, issued its recommendations for a settlement. Many rail workers say they fall short and are prepared to strike to win more. The PEB recommended 22% raises over the course of the 5-year contract, which would be the highest wage increases rail unions have seen in decades, but they are offset by increases in healthcare costs and come in the midst of high inflation. The PEB also refused to touch almost any of the union's demands on work rules and conditions, either denying them outright or suggesting that the unions return to the slow negotiation and arbitration process they have already languished in since November 2019. Unions have been demanding a sick leave policy. Rail workers have no sick days, and the PEB has refused them. PEB also refused to take a position on the strict attendance policies that have infuriated many rail workers. This is being reflected across the nation and in all industries. There is a conscious fight back against a decent living for all of us, and we need to understand what they're doing, who's doing it, and so forth. But over to you.
Well, I mean, they're doing it to increase their profits from their obscene profit levels to
even though profit levels are higher than they have been in history.
What's past obscene?
I don't know. I guess the level of extraction is just, to have billions of dollars, to approach $1 trillion, and then say that you've earned it is the most absurd statement.
With the sweat of their own brow.
Yes.
They've earned every. Yeah. Anyway, enough of that. More on that, actually. There is a leaked document this week in the UK that's showing that the energy giants are looking to make a killing. Let's just say that. Climate activists and others are outraged this week over a leaked government analysis showing that UK gas producers and electricity generators could make up to 170 billion pounds, roughly $200 billion dollars in profits over the next 2 years. And that's happening even as Britons endure price hikes amid a cost of living crisis. Kind of like what's going on here. As reported by Bloomberg, the Treasury analysis suggests that about 2/5 of the $170 billion in excess profits. What is an excess profit? This is something that immediately jumps to my head.
It's something that Republicans don't believe in.
An excess profit.
Yes.
Anyway, suggesting about 2/5 of the 170 billion pounds in excess profits would be attributable to power producers, suggesting extension of the windfall tax could be lucrative for the government coffers, referring to a 25% energy profits levy passed this spring.
You can tell that's not an American article because they have the phrase excess profits. In the United States, it's like, what? Excess?
The outlet added that Treasury officials will deliver the assessment to the next Prime Minister when they take office on September 6th. So 350.org Europe tweeted in response to the reporting that record profits and record poverty are not a coincidence as they happen side by side. They are part of the same broken energy system.
Yes. If you can suck 10,000 in profits, and if you can destroy $10,000 in wages from 100,000 people, guess how much money you have?
Trades Union Congress, a federation of unions in the UK, declared that ministers must tax these profits. Ministers must tax these profits and urgently cancel the energy bill increase. That's right. There's about to be an energy bill increase in Britain. It's announced that its annual cap on consumer energy bills will be raised coming next month. The Energy Regular announced last week that as of October, the cap on consumer energy bills skyrockets from nearly £2,000 annual to about £3,500 annual. I mean, that's almost doubling the cap in 1 year when people in Britain are being severely impacted economically, much like people in the States, right? Bloomberg highlighted that the amount is expected to go even higher in January as UK competes with other nations for limited gas supplies. Fossil fuel companies' soaring profits this year have elicited global accusations of war profiteering and price gouging to serve shareholders at the expense of consumers. And it's fueled demands for policymakers in the UK and beyond to respond with windfall taxes. We don't know, Teresa. Teresa's having a bit of a struggle with her phone. The struggle is real.
The robots, they're fighting back. I'm sorry what I said, Siri.
She takes it back, Siri. She takes it back. Don't hurt us, Siri.
I fixed it.
You did? Cool. Okay, cool. Carry on, then it's your turn.
All right. Well, amid the escalating climate crisis, get back there. Okay. Many scientists are leaving their desks. This is more information about the scientist rebellion. They're leaving the insular world of academia to join the ranks of a global movement for climate action, the scientist rebellion. How rebellious the scientist activists can be depends on where they live. Strategies may vary from blockading oil refineries to building environmental awareness from scratch in places where the environment is still not on the political agenda. But in a world in which contributions to global warming have been unequal, the people most affected are often those who know the least about it. Probably someone paddling through water in a former city in Pakistan right now. Scientist rebellion members believe in civil disobedience and even claim to apply the scientific method to their activism. They're quoted in the article saying, "We believe that science should be communicated for what it is and that scientists have the duty to tell the truth." That's from Gianluca Grimalda, a 50-year-old Italian researcher in the social psychology at the Kiel Institute for World Economy in Germany. I haven't heard of the city of Kiel in a long time. And a spokesperson for the group, she also said the present failure to communicate hard climate science and its stark reality has led to a dangerous acquiescence with the idea that business as usual will in the end lead to some breakthrough technology that will keep us out of the hole, end quote. And that breakthrough technology right now, which is completely bogus, is the carbon capture industry. There's two types of carbon capture right now that are actually going forward. One is pumping CO2 into the ground to force oil up. I'm not even kidding about that. Which, the oil companies, of course, claim is them saving the climate. And you can't make this stuff up.
I know, my head just exploded, even though I already know about that one. Every time I see it, my head explodes again.
And the other is giant machines that would have to be produced by the millions and certainly won't be. And even the giant ones that have been built only capture, they cannot possibly begin to reverse the situation.
No, but you plant trees.
Yeah,
because the trees, they breathe in the CO2, and so no, seriously, I've read this. A lot of the greenwashing is because I've just planted 3 hectares of trees.
Oh yes, the climate. What do you call it? Shouldn't get on the air and say what you call it, should you? The trading, the carbon trading. Such nonsense.
There's the carbon capture and carbon swapping.
I mean, when you understand what a scam it is, it's tempting to just get in it. It's just like, why shouldn't you get some of these millions and billions of dollars by
because it's immoral.
It's by claiming that the stretch of forest that you didn't cut down is making up for a factory that is just farting out the worst things into the environment and will never stop. So that kind of brings us around to, you have another item, though.
I got so much.
A climate item, right?
Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's do this.
Let's talk
it. Along these lines, sorry, I have something in my eye. I was hoping your last item would go longer. So there's a new body of water in southern Pakistan. You may have noticed it's about 62 miles wide, and it's been widely reported in many, many news sources over the last week. It's shocking. It will take days, it'll take weeks or months for the water to recede. In the meantime, millions are left homeless. And overall, 33 million people have been affected by the worst monsoon floods in recorded history.
We lost Pakistan.
Pakistan's climate minister, Sherry Rahman, reports that parts of the country resemble a small ocean at this time. She said, by the time this is over, we could well have 1/4 to 1/3 of Pakistan underwater. The Indian Ocean is heating up, and I was reading yesterday that basically 3 times the population of Portugal, about about the more than the population of Australia, about 90% of the population of Canada. That's the number of people in Pakistan right now that are internally displaced, that have been that have lost their homes, that cannot access their homes. They're internally displaced, internal refugees, and there's not actually shelters because there's, most of the country is not able to respond to a crisis of that magnitude. Um, so 3 times the population of, or 3 times the number of internally displaced refugees in Ukraine. Right now, it's happening in Pakistan, but we're not really seeing that outward global pouring of, oh, bring us you're tired, you're poor, you're drowning. Please bring us your refugees, bring us your internally displaced. Um, all these countries are going to line up to take you in because we're in solidarity with you,
Right.
like we saw with Ukraine, even though 3 times the amount of people are facing that kind of devastation.
Let's see. What is the skin color of people in Ukraine versus?
Ding! So we've got horrific climate catastrophe. We've got millions of people internally displaced within the country. We've got damn few resources going to them. And we see the criminally murderous effects of capitalism and racism and climate catastrophe, all right, kind of coming together there.
Like your fingers?
And it's bad. It's just fucking horrific. The Indian Ocean is heating up about a third faster than the rest of the world. Check that. The very warm waters in the Bay of Bengal are helping to create more destructive cyclones and flooding. The air warming over waters is now containing more moisture than the 20th century average. Warming waters contains more moisture than the 20. I'm sorry. Warming waters make the winds that blow over them more erratic, and the wayward winds from the Arabian Sea help push the heavy monsoon rains further north than they usually extend. So, all these factors are working together to create the catastrophe, the horrific conditions that we are seeing currently in Pakistan. The 2021 State of the Climate Report's been issued by the American Meteorological Association. An annual report finds that the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere continues to increase unabated, and it's now at a year-long average of nearly 415 parts per million. Scientists have reported that Arctic snow cores show that there hasn't been this much CO2 in the atmosphere for at least 800,000 years. And it was noted that about 800,000 years ago, we were still kind of a swampy tropical planet. So let that sink in for a minute. The growth rate for methane was the highest on record in 2021. Methane is 25 times more potent than CO2 as a heat trapping gas. The slight good news there is that it dissipates more quickly if you don't actually keep adding it. So once you stop producing methane, I don't suppose we would ever stop producing methane. It's a natural gas that breaks down from organic matter, or that is produced by the breakdown of organic matter. But industrial practices currently engaged in is increasing that methane production out of control. Point is, about methane, it dissipates quickly if you don't keep adding to it. It can be dissipated in as little as 9 years. And compares to carbon dioxide, which even if we were to stop producing it, say tomorrow, there was some sort of like the world woke up and thought, yeah, internal combustion engines, we're done. If we stop producing CO2s tomorrow, what we have in the atmosphere now will continue. It will make it to the stratosphere in the next 50 to 150 years, and it can last there for thousands of years. So, the report from the American Meteorological Association says that Death Valley, California, reached 54.4 Celsius, that's 130 Fahrenheit, for the second time since records have been kept last year. Across the global ice concentrations or chromosphere, glaciers lost mass of the for the 34th consecutive year. The 34th consecutive year. BBC is predicting that in the near future, the glacial ice loss will become so great that it will actually threaten the water supplies of Switzerland and other European countries. And that actually, as I thought about it, it's horrific, but that actually might be good news because it seems like the only time the government leaders of the most polluting countries, of those responsible for this mess, actually stand up and take notice is when it happens to someone in the US, Canada, or Europe.
Switzerland will actually take infrastructure action to deal with it. For example, if I can bring this home, is this a good time to bring this home, or you want to finish this up?
I don't know. I don't know what you're going to say. I'm going to get back to this eventually, so go ahead.
Okay, well, got up this morning and the sun was red, and it was beautiful and horrible. And of course, you all know exactly why it was red, because there's smoke to the east of here. And so the burning has begun, and the rains have not come here. If we were actually dealing with climate change as it is on the ground, if we were accurately, or at least attempting to be accurate in gestalting the acceleration of data that we have, that the world is warming faster and faster, if we acknowledge the fact that every time we get a comprehensive scientific look, the first thing the scientists say is unprecedented, I have to put a quarter in the jar, then Portland would adjust in many ways. One of the ways would be that, we would have water towers all over the place. It's a very forested city. It's going to go away, period. It's going to burn. It's only a matter of time. If we had any sense, we'd be building water towers right now. The Swiss will do that. They deal with that sort of thing. They set up, for example, all the bridges into Switzerland are set to fall down at a moment's notice to prevent invasion. But we're deep in denial. And one of the ways that we're in denial is the ways that journalists fail to take scientific specific reports and understand that this is super conservative, precise science that they're looking at when they say by 2050, they're talking only about the indices that they're looking at. They don't know how fast climate change is moving, except every now and then there's a comprehensive look taken, and the attitude is always, oh my God. And so
it's so much faster and so much worse than we thought.
So let's be honest and real about that and say that the disaster is here. All actions are necessary.
Oh, that's actually where I go.
Okay, all right.
So it's in horrific news for Bangladesh, for Egypt, for island nations and coastlines everywhere. The report also says across the world's oceans, global mean sea level was record high for the 10th consecutive year, reaching 97 millimeters above the 93 average when satellite measurements began. That's an increase of almost 5 millimeters in 2020. We've also heard that sea levels will rise about a foot as one of the global ice shelves collapses, right, in Greenland. Seas are rising. Carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere are rising to beat a million-year-old record. Super monsoons are happening. Wildfires are occurring. Glaciers are melting. This is all happening now, today. We are currently in the midst of a massive state of emergency, and we are only at the very beginning of the climate catastrophe. This is what we're seeing at the beginning of the effects. How much worse will it be next year? How much worse will it be the year after that? It's time. It's time to start all emergency actions now. It was time to start them like 10 years ago when we were warning, what scientists were warning, when we were warning, when community organizers were warning that these things were gearing up, that some things were already starting. It's time to end greenhouse gases. It's time to cut CO2 now. It's not time to, think about gradually ramping them down. We've got legislation in 20, no, let's say 2030. We can aim to decrease by no, 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 no. It's time to act like it's the emergency that it is. Because in fact, what it is an existential threat to life on this planet, right? It is an existential threat to all life, and it's happening right now.
This is where MAGA comes in. Is it time to do this?
Yeah.
This is where MAGA comes in because, for someone like Charles Koch, his New Zealand bunker is just one of several bunkers. There might be, as I love the suggestion of solar-powered airships. Well, if there are solar-powered airships to get out of the worst of the atmospheric hell, it's going to be people like Charles Koch who are on it. It's going to be billionaires and millionaires. And we need to save the entire planet. Big oil is not, of course, motivated to do anything about this. They really need to stop this. They've got their bunkers. They'll figure out a way to be just fine. If they have to dig 100 feet beneath the surface or put themselves in orbit, they'll do it. They don't care. They can't care because they are megalomaniacs about the rest of us. And so it is up to us to, first, we have to acknowledge just how bad things are. And second, that we are going to have to destroy corporate capitalism to change it. The resources to save the world are in place right now. This is the emergency. And I want to say also right now that I hate geoengineering. It's stupid. I've always hated it. I've said that for decades. It's a stupid idea. It only could be used as an alternative to immediate impending death. Well, it's time to geoengineer. We need trillions of dollars to do it. You can find trillions just in offshore tax dodges. There's 20 trillion, I think, is the latest total I've seen. The Pentagon hides trillions, and either we force them to cough it up or we all die. And these things that you see in the press that say by 2050, for example, the Greenland ice sheet is melting at a certain rate. They found out that it's melting at a greater rate. The scientists have found out. You do have a few climate scientists who look at the political world and say, like Jason Bach said, we're fucked. I mean, that's understandable. But other scientists, of course, they're doing science. Bless them. I want them to do science. But they look at the Greenland ice sheet and they say, we found this other dynamic. It's melting at a certain rate. By 2050, now they're accurate. This is true. We cannot think by 2050 anymore, or we will continue to be surprised. Oh, look at that. This other phenomenon is happening. Oh, look at that. The West Hills are burning down. It's going to be like that here in Portland.
Because there are so many factors that are feeding into the overall dynamic cycle, right? It's not like you can take one section of what's happening with the climate catastrophe and just sort of take it out and look at it removed from all other parts. These discrete events feed into each other to create, if you will, a cyclone of things that are accelerating the catastrophe that we see unfolding around us in real time.
So Charles Koch needs to stop you from doing anything. And for that, he needs an army of millions of people. And this is where MAGA comes in. MAGA is an army of millions of people who are deluded to serve big oil.
They're deluded to serve their master.
Yeah.
And their master is Trump. And Trump.
So we have, for example, Ginny Thomas going around. Ginny Thomas is a huge, huge capo. I've only realized in the last several weeks just how powerful Ginny Thomas is and has been. She is on the interlocking boards of several hide-the-money corporations that the Koch brothers and Big Oil have put together to deliver resources to everything from conservative bots that always pop up and make it look like everyone's conservative whenever you discuss something like this. And they even pay into of course, they pay into MAGA. They pay into conservative groups. They pay into anti-abortion fights just to keep people fighting. And they also literally pay into these violent militias that we saw on January 6th. Ginny Thomas is one person. She's just one. But she controls hundreds of millions of dollars, which is distributed to fascists across the United States and the world. She is extremely, extremely powerful. And that's why she has that smug, damn look on her face every time you see her in the press.
Yeah, that and the fact that her husband's on the Supreme Court, so it doesn't really look like she'll ever face any consequences.
Handy
You know,
thing,
so
isn't it?
Gotta say.
Well, and so
And I want to say about those troops, right? Those MAGA troops.
yeah.
And the loyalty to Trump. I mean, we've watched this last month, right, has been so full of Schadenfreude, so full of just whiz-bang revelations about Trump's crimes in office and out of office, between the corporate fraud in New York, between the election fraud in Georgia, and all the wagons sort of circling. And then we get the Mar-a-Lago secret document. I don't even, what do we call that? The how this is coming to light. And why does he have those in the first place? And what's that all about? That's a whole nother topic. But as all of these things come together, and there's the January 6th commission as well, showing that is painting a pretty good picture of culpability by Trump in the coup attempt. And yesterday, prior to Biden's speech, where he finally calls out the fascist dynamic, Trump said in an interview that if he's reelected in 2024, he would look very, very favorably at full pardons for anyone participating in the insurrection last year. So that was in an interview yesterday with right-wing radio host Wendy Bell. Trump claimed that he is financially supporting some of the people who took part in the Capitol attack, which I find dubious at best, since the man doesn't even pay his own lawyers. Anyway.
Yeah, anyone who believes that, what can you say about them? It's like they're suckers. I mean,
and he adds that they were in my office actually only 2 days ago, so they're very much in my mind. So he's saying that the insurrection, some folks that took part in that insurrection, he continues to support, and they continue to support him, and they had a little office get together, and so he's thinking about them a lot. Isn't that sweet? That's so sweet. So he says, you get some of these judges, Trump, you get some of these judges who are so nasty and so angry and so mean. He says, I will tell you, I will look very, very favorably about full pardons if I decide to run and win. I will be looking very, very strongly at full pardons. So Trump's remarks came the same day that Biden delivered a primetime address warning that Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Of course, Biden in this speech last night actually went on to say that there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans, and that is a threat to this country. Nearly 900 people have been charged with crimes in connection to the January 6th insurrection attempt that Trump provoked with his incessant lies about the 2020 presidential election. More than 300 people have pled guilty to crimes stemming from the Capitol assault. Representative Gary Connolly is a Democrat in Virginia. He tweeted a response to Trump's comments saying, Donald Trump wants political violence to be the norm in America, and the GOP is right there with him. They will bring this country to the brink to soothe their fragile ego of a madman. Following the former president's comments, a retired New York police officer named Thomas Webster was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his involvement in the Capitol attack. Webster was convicted of several felonies for attacking a Washington police officer with a flagpole on January 6th, tackling the officer to the ground as he tried to rip off his gas mask. That's the longest sentence anyone's been given so far for the January 6th insurrectionists. And, you know, you just sort of play that in your mind. You think about the violence that we saw on that day, and we've all seen the videos of it. And we have, Mango Mussolini, call him what you want, come forward and say, yeah, he'd really consider pardoning them all because they're his shock troops, right? And that's just, I'd say, a blatant dog whistle. It's a little louder than the dog whistle to say, hey, I'm your guy. Stick with me. We're going to get through this together. You're my shock troops. We're going to go.
Well, I was really glad to see Biden come out and confront this situation. When you hear, of course, that secretaries of states are going MAGA, or that there are MAGA candidates for that, it's part and parcel of the whole anti-voting initiative, the whole anti-democracy initiative that Trump is setting in place. He said, words to the effect, when I run and win. And what that means is when he runs and these secretaries of states count the votes,
Deliver
it doesn't matter
election to
what
him.
the votes
Yeah.
are, it's who counts the votes. When it comes to that, when it comes to that sort of corruption, they're putting corrupt people in place in various red states. They have other campaigns going, for example, dozens of states already, the Republican held legislatures of several states, when I say several, there's tens of states, are moving forward with an initiative to write a new constitution. And the way this would be done would be a constitutional convention that would be dominated by Republican state legislators. There's a way to do that with the Constitution. Of course, that would create a horrific right-wing Gilead, and that's what they want. And they're really, really moving forward to it with those millions I was talking about that are distributed by Jenny Thomas. This is moving forward. This is very strong right now. There's the midterms will be questionable because of all of the things that Trump has put in place. And by the time we get to 2024, if these anti-voting efforts are not reversed, if True the Vote is not confronted as a criminal organization, for example, then polls will be closed. Electors will be substituted. Whole populations will be refused the polls, like in Texas. It's very, very difficult to vote in Texas if you are not white, conservative, and relatively wealthy. We will have, I saw an optimistic prediction saying that we will have something like a Viktor Orban post-democratic oligarchy and theocratic state, but whatever it would be extremely ugly. And Trump has absolutely no intention of working equitably or in good faith to win the next election. That's why he says, when I run and win. And so the Democrats have finally become alarmed by this. And I liked the fact that Biden came very close to calling it out completely. And he did need to call out MAGA for being fascist. So getting around to the climate, one of the reasons all of this is happening, all these millions are being provided to control millions of idiots in the United States, is that if they are not controlled, if they do not create chaos and mayhem, then the people might get together to stop the climate emergency, to save their lives, understanding what is happening. And that would just be a disaster for all of these criminals who are in charge of big oil, who hid the fact that the climate emergency was coming for decades from us. They understand that, like Gaddafi, there will be an ugly end for them because the rage will be titanic. So MAGA and climate are intimately connected. Both must be confronted continually.
Yeah. I'm not, I want to respond to a couple of things. Yeah, it's true. None of the major television stations carried Biden's speech last night. And so as we're in this very existential fight right now for the fate of our planet, the fate of democracy, really the fight of our lives right now, at this time, to see the major news networks, television networks, and NPR decide that Biden's speech wasn't worth airing last night? How does that happen? I don't remember any time a president announced a nationwide address that the stations didn't preempt the regular programming to air it. Do you? I mean, from the time I was a little kid, it's always like, wait, I wanted to watch Happy Days. Why is this really
Yes.
boring dude on the television?
Major presidential address, and so that is interesting and significant.
It is significant, and I think it has everything to do with, again,
They take it aside.
and whether you all we always hear, oh, the liberal media, and many of the announcers, especially I would go ahead and say on MSNBC, are relatively liberal. A couple of them I'm extraordinarily fond of. Hello, Mehdi Hassan, I love you. That still the corporate control, the corporate ownership of the stations are powerful, huge corporations that are absolutely intertwined with the rest of the extreme wealth of this world. And so when it comes to coverage, again, it doesn't matter if the announcers may have liberal or even progressive or radical tendencies. The owners of the station don't.
Right. And so while we're in the middle of this discussion, I'd like to urge you again to let people know I keep stumbling into people in town, not literally, that say, "Oh, what happened to your show?" I've been working on this sort of thing, and I has also for decades. And I think there are still a lot of people, especially in the area, Portland area, that would be grateful to know that they can still hear this sort of commentary. This isn't for everyone. This has gone on for most of the hour, and this is commentary that gets in depth and is quite left political. But there are also a lot of people who would just be quite satisfied. So please, when I ask you to press those buttons and do it, and please tell people that the
Spread
show
the word.
exists.
Spread the good word. A little earlier, John asked, "Can anyone please explain how inflation equates to record profits?"
Well,
And I think that is something that it's right up your alley.
well, the example of Amazon makes it really clear. This was done the across the board. You know that Amazon has hegemonic price power in the United States. I believe they started it, and it was done. People close to the C-suites have been talking about making the workers understand that they're not in charge and that they shouldn't be. And the across the board increase on prices in Amazon shocked the nation. Kroger followed suit, and this was inflation has always been driven by demand and supply. For example, in the 70s, the supply of oil was sharply restricted by the Saudi and OPEC cartel, and prices jumped for oil and for everything else that depended on the petroleum economy. And this was, an accident, if you will, of politics. But it did go back to the decision by powerful people to raise prices, and they benefited greatly. The price of oil went up tremendously. They became even richer than they had ever been. Amazon, Jeff Bezos has done the same thing with grocery and sundries prices. So if inflation had occurred naturally, as the way they teach in economics school, there would have been such a demand for Amazon products that they would have raised the prices just to keep up with it. They would have made greater profits, but they would have had greater expenses because they'd be supplying so much stuff. Nothing like that happened. Bezos decided to punish the United States and the world, and he raised the prices, and other corporations, feeling their hegemonic power, their oligarchic power, also raised the prices. And when they did that, there was a period of time in which their increase of prices was greater than the sting that they also felt from inflation. So in other words, there is a differential. They collected much more money than was degraded by the ensuing inflation.
Right.
Also, they don't buy the same stuff. Also,
Right.
they keep their money in pools of other currencies. So when they degrade the power of the US dollar, it doesn't matter. They've got plenty of euros and renminbi and whatever they want.
Right. So, again, what we see is corporate greed left unchecked is ruinous, and that is actually what is driving the pain at the cash register at overall in our lives as our pennies are stretched ever further in this time of rising fuel costs, rising everything costs. And it's always blamed on the supply chain, on workers demanding rights, on anything. Look over there. It's never actually like, oh yeah, we've raised prices because we want to feather our nests a bit more. We want to pad our own profits. They never actually just come out and say that.
You and I don't have a cadre of employees to run around the world and set up bunkers. The oil billionaires do, and Bezos does. And so it is not in their interest to allow us to understand what's going forward.
Well, yeah, true that. And so we have, it's not in their best interest. The corporate elite, the wealthy elite, the rulers of the world, just really, it's not in their best interest to participate democratically, fairly, and transparently, because we wouldn't put up with that, right? That's what I would say.
There's
If it wasn't for their dirty tricks and obfuscation, the people would have revolted.
There needs to be an understanding of the pain that we're suffering from the atmosphere has come from people with names, places, and addresses, and they will continue to strap us to those burning trees until we start to fight back.
And I'm encouraged by the staffers in many congressional offices doing sit-ins over the last 6 weeks in an attempt to get the congressional reps that they staff to take climate change seriously. I'm encouraged by the scientists who are strapping themselves to buildings to ask the government to demand the government respond to the reports that the scientists keep issuing. We're very much living in that don't look up world, right? And it's not a comfortable place to be. It's uncomfortable is not actually, it's a bit of a, yes, I do hail from a British upbringing. It's a bit of an understatement. It's uncomfortable to think about the imminent death of the planet. But it's important that we actually pull back the blinders.
It's a hair on fire emergency.
And note that that is exactly what it is.
And it's a cat.
Hello, Libby. Libby has been very, very interactive.
Speaking of climate changes, coyotes have gotten into Southeast Portland. So if you're in Southeast Portland, be careful. They like to snack on these guys.
Oh, yeah. It's true. If you do live in Southeast Portland, there have been increased reports of cats being, being killed by coyotes. And that, again, has everything to do with environmental destruction. So are we
Intuit?
Are we transitioning into the Tarot?
Time to Intuit.
You can see her ear just now and again.
Maybe even Intuit it.
We're just gonna note that
cat.
Note that if I wince, it's because she's making kitty biscuits on my lap. As she straddles between trees and I, so she can sit on both of us. It's so nice. An egalitarian cat, if ever there was one. A bear in Vancouver, says John. Wow. I had missed that.
Yeah.
So about Tarot. This week, here's what I got. We have the Page of Pentacles, the Hanged One, and Death. Yeah, looks a little ominous, and it kind of is. Page of Pentacles is talking about our need to commit. We may have found work that we need to be doing that is in terms of building up our community and building up our networks of mutual aid in countering the ill that is out there. finding our place and committing to it, knowing that we have to stay the course, knowing that there's much to be learned as we go, but knowing also that one just needs to start walking the walk, right? And actually committing to do in doing. And we can only do that adequately and accurately. We can only do that successfully if we take the blinders off, if we change our perspective. It's a radical submission to the truth. It's a radical submission to the conditions that we find ourselves in. This is time to stop sugarcoating anything. You know, Helen Caldicott actually said years ago, I think it was in the 90s, that if she had like her one wish, she would, I don't think she phrased something like that. I don't think she said if I had one wish. But she did say that she thought the world would change overnight if people just stopped using euphemisms. If we stopped sugarcoating the truth, if we stopped trying to make it easier to accept and digest, if we just basically looked at the horrifying reality in which we find ourselves. And so that is, in part, the lesson of the hanged one here. Taking off the blinders, making sure that we see things for what they are in a way that is like we submit to it, right? We understand that's where we're at. We have to reconcile with an accurate picture of where we're at before we can figure out how to get out of it. So, and death. Death, possibly the most misunderstood tarot card ever, thanks to Hollywood. You get the death card and woo. Death talks about radical transformation. And I don't think I'm quite, I'm not optimistic enough. I'm not Pollyanna enough to think that, oh, and I got the death card. That means that we're going to prevail and we're going to turn it over and it's going to, no, it's about transformation. We're all going to be transformed by our work in this, by actually accurately assessing the emergency that we find ourselves in. We are transforming ourselves in the process of doing this work. And transforming ourselves is actually necessary. We have parts of the solution that we hold together. We have to work together to enact it. We have to really be a part of allowing ourselves to be changed by the work we're doing. We are the changers and we are the changed. And it's important because we have to remain vulnerable. When we harden ourselves, we close ourselves off to new information and we close ourselves off to compassion. And when we decide we can't change, we're done, this is it. That's what we end up doing. We harden ourselves and we isolate ourselves and we become not only ineffective, but we aren't engaging in actually the struggle to better the world or to better ourselves in any way. So transformation is the way to go. Allowing ourselves to be radically transformed by the process of the work we're doing with each other in our hopes to transform the world. And that's what I have.
That's some good intuitive.
So with that, stay tuned. Please do subscribe. Please hit the notification bell.
Libby's ready to go.
She is about half a centimeter from sitting on the computer and flipping it, possibly turning off our connection. So we'll just wrap now.
Must be time to go.
Please do hit the notification bell. We do often threaten to come on in between 9 o'clock Friday morning stream times when breaking news happens, when things happen, and we might post other videos anytime now. So please hit that notification.
I'm feeling better.
Hit that notification bell and subscribe. Tell your friends and neighbors.
And our love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea.
See you next week, if not before.
Bye-bye.